Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for
Billions. Billions of dollars. UnSpun.
George. Are we talking budgets right off the top?
Right off the game. Oh my God. 1.96. I mean, come on, $2 billion budget in Vancouver, operating budget. Insane. 2 billion. When I started, when Vision Vancouver got elected in 2008, it was a $600 million budget in Vancouver. Now we're at $2 billion. It's nuts. It's nuts.
I can't even wrap my head around that number.
Yeah, it's out of control is what it is.
And
12%.
Wait.
Yeah.
But before we dive into the numbers, yes. I just want to point out the fact that it feels like nonstop tax increases, tax on tax on tax, this tax, that tax. You got to opt in and opt out and do whatever tax, and you're going to tax, and nothing seems to be getting done in terms of the needs and infrastructure. So please tell me, George-Affleck, that somewhere in this $2 billion budget, we're going to see some improvement in this city. Because as a born and raised Vancouverite, I'm very, very worried about the city.
Yes. Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, there is. So let's just give it. So 1.96 billion, so $2 billion budget, 12% overall increase, but a 9.6% tax increase. Ken Sim promised he wouldn't do over a 10% tax increase. There wouldn't be any 10% tax increase. Won't be any 10% tax increases under my control. So he's 9.6, very close.
9.6,
very close. Ken, nice one. Good spin on that one. There's a couple of, I don't have the full budget yet. I've only got the highlights. Obviously the two ones that you'll love. One is street cleaning. Okay. That's a 12.9% increase. So that's a lot of cash. Street. And then of course park board.
Now is that just wait.
Yeah.
Street cleaning.
Yes.
Is that just like driving around in a street cleaner and cleaning streets, or is that like actually cleaning up?
Well, I don't know how you micro break that down.
But like every lamppost going down, let's just say 4th, which is 2nd, which is 6th, right? 4th Avenue that becomes Great Northern Way. That stretch of road all the way down from one end of Vancouver really to middle of East Van, let's call it. So one stretch of road. Every single lamppost has graffiti on it.
Yeah. And so one of the interesting things is BIAs are kind of charged with a lot of that stuff. I noticed also there's an increase for the BIAs, a significant increase. I don't know what it is. But anyways, just so you know, when you see a BIA increase, it's a flow through. So it's a tax. The city collects the money and then gives it to the BIA. So there's a
Business Improvement Association.
Yes, the Business Improvement are getting a lot more money. I'm guessing that's also for cleaning, probably for graffiti if they're smart BIAs. So you've got the street cleaning budget overall that the city will be doing, and then BIAs are getting a bunch more cash, which come from the businesses. So that's going to hit the businesses directly because we pay. So it's a flow through. So I get an invoice, I pay it as a business to the city. The city then gives the cash to the BIA. So it's still a tax. I like that kind of tax because I know where my money's going. I'm giving the BIA,
I want to know where my money's going.
$1,000. I'm going, okay, you're going to clean the graffiti? Awesome. And I can complain about my BIA if it's not doing its job.
Right. So we'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully things will move fairly quickly because it feels like we're way behind. Also feeling like we're way behind on crime. So where does policing fall in this budget? Because we know how contentious that issue was with the prior administration. Even though he's responsible for decriminalizing the world. Yeah.
There's a 15% increase in what's called support services. So that's a whole bunch of stuff, e-com and police. So big increase. That's our biggest budget line item is that, over almost $400 million of that money goes to policing. So it's a lot of money. And, so they're getting the money, and then parking's back. So you saw that 40% increase in parking revenue for park board because they had stopped all their parking because of all their bike lanes. So you'll be happy about that. So you'll be able to park.
I am happy about that.
Makes cash to pay for operations. So I just want to, once again, I like to say this all the time to people, like there's two budgets the city has. There's a operating budget, which is your day-to-day operations, street cleaning, that kind of stuff. Then there's a capital budget, which is building things like a pool or building a bridge or building roads or putting in
infrastructure. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's their two that also is a $2 billion budget. And that is borrowed money or money that they get from development cost levies or community amenity contributions or other funding formulas. A
Which,
lot
can
of
I
it
jump
though
in
was
there?
borrowed. Yeah.
But because I want to jump in there, because there was a time where that bank account was stacked because of the development, because of the real estate that was booming, and all of the fees that were associated with that. You were talking about how that the city started to use that bank account in a way that was almost like cookies, 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 instead of actually doing the, how many times have we heard the things around this city that need repair, that are crumbling infrastructure, broken? Driving down a road now, it used to be lanes in and around Kitsilano would feel like you were driving down an old country road, potholes and what have you. I remember when those were fixed, when side roads were improved, right? When infrastructure was improved, and more driving around the city, it's like, because it's not fixed.
And and Park Board, by the way, the city, when I was there, scooped away $100 million that they had set aside from levies for Park Board because they were so incompetent that they didn't use the money to build anything. So just to be clear though, and this is the case for most cities, you have these development cost levies so that when you build a building, you have to pay a bunch of money for sewers or whatever upgrades that need to be done.
Right.
CACs, in the case of Vancouver, they're kind of all over the map. Most community amenity contributions in cities are fixed, and this is cash. Also, developers pay for specific things. Now, is a requirement that in a capital budget, in this funding, it's very specific in what they're for. It's not meant to be spent on anything you want. So, it's like a new park for the neighborhood or sewers or in that neighborhood. It's usually related specifically to that development to ensure that development doesn't impact the neighborhood in a negative way, whether that be under the ground or above the ground. So parks and sewers, like two different things completely. It's very important for when people move into a neighborhood.
Right.
But what happened over many years with Vision and when I was there is they would you can do through a vote, council can reallocate that money. And they did that often. They would take the money that was meant for a neighborhood, say we're in Southeast Vancouver, that was raised. And because it hadn't been used yet, they'd move it over to some other project. And certainly with Park Board, they snapped away $100 million that was meant for pools and all that kind of stuff because Park Board wasn't using it. And we said, we're going to reallocate that. I, of course, voted against that. But it was money that the Park Board just simply that was allocated to them that they weren't using. Another part of this budget is, and I've talked about this, is the fact that they have a negative savings account. Basically, I'll put it in simple terms. They used up all the extra cash that was lying around. I think it was around 60 or 70 million that they had in the bank because of COVID. Now, if you notice, the tax increase in Burnaby, our neighbor, is 3.99%. Here in Vancouver, we're at a 9.6% increase. You know why? I would bet it's because under ousted David Corrigan, Mayor Corrigan, who was a previous mayor, got booted out in 2018. He was really adamant that housing wasn't their file. As a result, they didn't spend any money on housing, and as a result of that, Burnaby saved so much. I think over $1 billion. I forget the exact number. I think they had $2 billion set aside or something that they had collected from CACs and all this other stuff that they could use, a basically savings account that they could that was set aside for them. So they haven't had to rely on and dipping in and asking for taxpayers to increase taxes like you've seen in Vancouver and other neighborhoods. Vancouver, and this was, I've talked about this. I said this when I was elected over and over again, when times were great. That entire time I was there, the economy was great. The interest rates were low, and we had almost zero inflation. My argument always like, guys, every year we'd have a surplus. We're not allowed to have surpluses. You have to spend the money you have, and you can't lose money either. You're not allowed to have, whenever they say, oh, it's a balanced budget. Cities are required to have balanced budget. It's not an option. You have to balance your budget. What we weren't doing though is taking any money that we'd have at the end of the year and putting it into savings. We didn't save anything. All we kept doing was increasing taxes, spending that money like crazy, and never saved any money or set aside any. And we spent so much money on housing. We increased our capital budget. We increased our borrowing to pay for housing. Borrowing now, as you know, went from I think the interest rates that we were paying as city was at 3 or 4 or 5% locked in when I was there. Now, if you want to borrow money, what are you paying on interest now? 10%? So if the city's borrowing money for the $500 million capital budget, which is twice what it used to be, if they have to borrow $200 or $300 million at 10%, that then impacts the operating budget. So in order to, you want to borrow money for something in the capital, this is where it impacts the operating budget. So you have the capital, the operating. If you borrow money at 10% to build stuff, you have to pay that money, that interest in that, off with your capital budget. So in the capital budget, the impact on that is it represents, it's around, I think it's 15% of the operating budget is now just to pay down debt.
Right.
So you look at 15%,
which is not getting stuff done.
No, and for every percent is around $8 million in operating. So if you want to raise your taxes, it's 8 million, 1% is $8 million in cash for the city. So every time you want 1%, 1%. So that's at 15%, 8 million times 15, you do the math, that's a big chunk of the budget. That's just paying borrowed money. And I was always like, pay down the debt, save some money while times are good, because guess what? Times are going to get bad. And here we are. And there's no savings. The city now has to raise taxes at 9.6%. When right now, you and I know, everyone knows, you go in to buy some butter. What is the price of butter has tripled in the past year? Yeah. Things like I can't afford 9.6%. Nobody can. And now the city's doing this to us. It's bad policy long-term that I blame certainly on Vision Vancouver, previous administration, and the last 4 years also. With terrible administration, didn't plan for the worst. We had a COVID, but they also knew a recession was coming, didn't plan for it.
No, and other jurisdictions around the city of Vancouver managed to get stuff done during COVID, which I will never forget, nor forgive the fact that our mayor at the time stepped up and said, we're screwed, we're broke, we're everybody's going to die, the police aren't coming and the firemen's not coming. It's like, what? And and nothing's getting done. It's ridiculous. So, okay, I'm going to move forward.
Yes.
The part of this that I really want to touch on, that this is a tough one for me, because you and I both just went double nickels. So the two of us can look at the increased property taxes and say, you know what, we can defer. We can defer. Won't hit us hard.
55 plus.
Young people, double nickels, 55 plus. We can defer. How many people in the city of Vancouver, because people always talk about legacy real estate and single family dwellings and people handing down, or generational wealth, or whatever you want to frame it as. How many people are now going to do that? And will this not hit young people extra? Like, I don't even need to worry about myself in this moment. And I find I do, as a moderate, whatever you want to call me, I want to take care of my neighbors, and I want to leave things better than I found it. And I feel like we are spiraling in a way that the unaffordability of where we're at right now, that raising, as you said, not 10%, but 9.6%, after what we've already experienced over the last number of years, it's adding up, George. I guess. Well,
and remember, it's 9.6% tax increase, but a 12% increase in the budget. So money's coming from other sources. So I always think you have to look at that. Okay, your increase, I mean, a 12.6, you're not a for-profit company. If I was raising my budget by 12% as a business, that means I'm having some prosperity, and then things are good. But when 9.6% of that's coming through paying, charging and expecting people just to pay me more money, I mean, that doesn't work that way in the private sector. But government thinks, oh, well, we'll just increase the budget. Instead of saying, let's try to increase the budget 4%. Okay, if we increase the budget 4%, however that works, then what does that mean? How does that change the revenue structure and the tax increase? That's what I haven't seen, and that's what I look forward to seeing. I think it's on March 7th is when the full thing will be presented.
The full budget, because that's what we keep talking about, is wanting that line by line, right? Yeah. Like wanting to be able to see, and like, can we just, did you watch Global Morning News today on Thursday?
No.
No, okay, so I was watching and I saw
Sarah Kirby-Young, but I think you had Mike Klassen.
It was Mike Klassen today, and it was interesting because Mike did, I like Mike Klassen. You and I've talked about it before. He, we've worked on events together and through BC Care Providers. Great person. He believes in trying to make the city better, but he's finding himself up to his neck in politics, right? Because once you get in, as you often say, George, is you realize just how little you can do and how much actual red tape and bureaucracy there might be and how much everything costs. Like there's a bunch of that. But what he was coming at, because the questions around this increase in the property tax, and he kind of took the spin, dare I say, here on UnSpun podcast, that he was like, well, he goes, I'm new and I'm having an opportunity to look around at what hasn't been done and what has been neglected. I'm paraphrasing here, but basically saying that, and mentioned, waist high weeds that need to be mowed. And I'm like, that's not a city hall thing. But it's on the trigger points, right? The touch points that people are really frustrated about in the city, because we do drive elsewhere just across boundaries, literally boundary road. And somehow it's better in other jurisdictions. Like, what is so broken in this town and the spin around this?
They don't have an elected park board in Burnaby. That's one thing. That's why you see a nicer, cleaner parks. They don't have all that politics of parks. There are a couple of things that are happening in my mind. I think that totally a spin on Mike's part. I think there are, no offense, but I think, he's been around long enough to know about that stuff. And, if you're elected, you got a 4-year term, you do the pain as fast as you possibly can. As far as I can tell right now, the pain is increasing taxes, not slashing. And I'm curious why you wouldn't do the painful cutting at this stage as well, to lose things that might be, make people angry or whatever. There's politicization.
He said there was nowhere to cut.
Oh, come on.
There was nowhere.
Give me a break. Housing is one of them. I know it's people say, oh, housing, but the city's involvement in the housing file is insane. And it's not just the stuff that you see press releases about. And the recent relationship with the province is great, but we can't be spending $300 million a year on housing. It's just not our job. And I think that, and if we're borrowing that money, as I said earlier, if you have to borrow $200 million to work on a file that isn't supposed to be your responsibility, and you're paying at 10% interest on $300 million per year. So you're looking at $1 billion that you're going to borrow over the next, I don't know, these are numbers that could possibly, let's say worst case, you had to borrow $500 million over the next 4 years on 10%. The math is crazy. That goes into your operating. So there's going to be automatic. So there's that. There's another issue that I think is really important that certainly Mike knows and that needs to be brought up is Metro, the regional government that is not elected. There are people that are put there through each city that says, here's our 4 people or 2 people or 1 person from our city. Those guys, this opaque organization that 90% of the business they do is in camera. I've been there. I sat there. I'm like, why is this all in camera? In camera being not on camera, you can't see what's going on. You don't see the vote. No public.
You're not even allowed to talk about it. Yeah.
You can't, you don't know, there's not even minutes really taken. It's just like so much of that goes on at this giant board that spends billions and billions of dollars. And the city, if you look at the budget, water, sewer, that kind of stuff comes by the decision by Metro. The cost, the increases, that comes from Metro. That organization needs to get put under control, and Vancouver and Surrey can control that. They have the dominant power. If they get together and say, we need to get Metro under control. These guys are out of control. Why are they spending so much money? And clearly often badly. And yet we don't even know. We don't even talk about it. This is the biggest government in British Columbia. It's like, for the size of the people, it's spending more money than any other government that we have. So, it's a single body of unelected people, a private little organization. It's crazy. So that's one thing that needs to be like, and he knows it. Every councillor should know this. Anybody who's been on council long enough or understands council or understands politics, and Mike certainly does, and Sarah Kirby-Young does, they know that board and that organization is out of control and needs to be reined in. The other thing is, okay, you're going to hit me with a 9.6% tax increase, 12% operating budget increase. Fine, that's $213 million extra this year. Ugh, like what? Okay, a $2 billion budget. I like to remind people it's not 1.96 billion. So let's go. It's $2 billion budget. So, but what I'm not hearing, and that's a painful hit for us, is okay, what's it going to be? Where am I going to be next year or the year after? The year after? Give me some hope. I don't see hope yet. I want to know that the goal by this council, in my mind, should be in Vancouver. Let's get to 0 by year 3. Like, I want to know how you're going to get there.
Tell me the goal.
Like, give me, okay, I understand. It's new. You're new. You got all this bureaucracy, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. But give me some hope. Give me some hope.
Okay. I want some hope on the park board file because you knew I was going to go there. So parking up, the park board is going to get a chunk of change from this budget for sure. Some back channel discussions have been had, people sending me DMs and reaching out about the removal of the Stanley Park bike lane and how option C we talked about here. Option C was decided upon, and yay for access for all, or Stanley Park for all, or whatever it's called, versus the hub agenda group. I don't know what they call themselves either. I've lost count. I've lost track.
Are they still getting money?
I wonder. Let's look in that in the line by line. But what I'm getting from, unnamed sources, I'll say, is how the bureaucracy within the park board remains unhealthy, apparently, allegedly, because the people who have been elected, the ABC park board, the majority of ABC, are novice to the inner workings. Of how it, and we still have the same GM and we still have the same staff, and there are people on staff who can the people on staff, this is I guess my question, do the people on staff need to be directed by the park board commissioners to make change, or does the GM ultimately direct staff?
No, of course it's a governance board, and so if you go by Robert's Rules of Orders, or the board structure is they're not a working board. Some councillors, certainly in the past, I think they're actually engineers or planners. No, you're supposed to set the direction and give the general manager or whoever, the CEO, whatever it might be, the direction of where you want to go. So in the case of the park board, they've given some clear direction already. Get rid of the bike lane. There's arguments about, is that coming or going or whatever. But they also can decide. They decide on this. Who is the senior manager? Who that's the one position, that general manager. The commissioners vote in camera on who they hire with a consultant. So you generally you hire a consultant. They headhunt. They find a person, make recommendations, and you as a commission, same for the council, vote on that senior person. People below that person, quite often the general manager, or in the case of Vancouver, the city manager, will present people that they've headhunted, and they say, here are my three choices. I'd recommend this person, then council decides. So, in the case of the general manager, 100% in their control, and the direction of the park board is in control. But, okay, sure, you run for office, you don't know what you're doing. But there is clarity. There are a lot of people behind the scenes, including John Cooper, who was on park board for 11 years, has, I know for a fact, offered his help to this council, to this commission, park board commissioners, if they need his help. I don't know if they're taking him up on it, but I know he's certainly offered. And John has a wealth of information about how things operate. No kidding. Not only from his time as a commissioner, but as a private citizen when he saved Bloedel Conservatory. So I just think, I don't know. I think that they're doing some, lipsticky things like getting the bike lanes, but I just don't know what the plan is for the overall plan. So I know I hope in that budget, and I'm going to go on record here at the end of February, that we need lifeguards, and we need kids pool and third beach pool open. Why can't that be open all year round?
Pools,
why can't kids pool be open all year round?
Let's start with just being able to go swimming for somebody who would use that pool with kids. Fitness, right? But even as somebody who would use it every single day, from the day it opened to the day it closed, seasonally, mile a day, every day, part of my commute, had the seasons passed, didn't know what time of day I'd go, but I always would go. I've been swimming twice in 3 years. Twice. Crazy. On my birthday. That's what I did for I'm so mad about this pool, George.
And why does it close and it closes early? I don't understand the logic.
I don't understand either. You know what? The only answer is that it's poor management when it comes to the staff. Like, they don't have enough money to staff the pool. And that is the only excuse that's acceptable, because there's no way that it needs to close at 8 p.m. when the sun doesn't even go down until 9:30 in points of the summer. It's beautiful and hot. And why aren't we staying open until the last person says, I'm done here?
And why are we underpaying our lifeguards? They are first responders. They are as important as firefighters and cops. Yeah. They get paid a pittance compared to them, and they are sitting there saving lives every day, especially on the beaches. That's a complicated, scary job. And that they don't report on the people that they save. You may hear about the people that die, which is luckily not many. And even then it's pretty, But the
But
people
we
that
are,
get saved,
yeah.
I know this for a fact. I have a connection to a lifeguard, and it's like, come on.
So I'm going to go back to a year ago on August long weekend when we were told, oh, the pool, it's not going to open this year. Oh, because the king tide that happened months before and it's flooded. And then there's huge backlash. And oh, magically we can open it, but it's going to be limited because, it's still COVID. And everybody's like, well, we can go to a restaurant, but we can't all go into the pool. Like, what? It's outdoor. What are you talking about? And then we spoke with the mayor of Port Coquitlam, Brad West, and he's like, funny about these long weekends. They happen every year in the summer at the same time,
that's right.
on the same day. We had been planning for our lifeguards since January, February. Well, it's January, February, Vancouver.
Yeah.
You better open these things because it's ridiculous. That is our tax dollar. Those are our tax dollars not working for us.
That's a management problem but it needs direction from the commissioners to say, get your house and let's get these things in order. Priorities, more lifeguards, pay them better, and make sure that we can get them in all the locations that we need it. And also people who do tickets. I mean, why do you even have people? You should be able to swipe a thing and walk through. Why are there people that still you have to kind of, anyways, there's a lot of
tap your card, man. It's like a compass card. Get on and off the bus. Get on and off the bus.
And you can automate it saying, nope, this place is full because there's too many people, so you got to wait. And you don't need a human to tell you that. Anyways,
I do like the idea of having young people as a starting position to sit there and learn the ropes. It's like working the concession stands and what have you. But there needs to be better management.
Please. Can we just privatize those concessions?
Can we have fish and chips and hot dogs back? We do not need a kombucha bar for $15 a cup.
So much kombucha.
So much kombucha. We're over it. Make it okay. You know what else I'm kind of getting over here, and I want your opinion. Did you see Vaughn Palmer's article about the Surrey Police Services versus the Surrey RCMP? And Brenda Locke's going to raise taxes in Surrey by whatever 18% or something like that because because she's like, that's how expensive it's going to be to transition back to
we've been talking about that. I predicted that. Even if she loses another police, if she's forced to keep the Surrey police, that's going to be a significant. Look at Vancouver just as a template. It's going to be a 30-year budget easily, and people will still never be happy. Okay, so but let's say the decision. So the good news for her is if the decision from the province and they say that it's not political, they're just taking their time. It's a big decision. Blah blah blah. That's what we're getting from Mike Farnworth. Once they decide on if it's going to be just one police force, no matter what it is, immediately she'll have a savings because she'll be able to kind of put a plan together. So. This 16%, 17% budget increase is a one-time pain. Same as Vancouver, right? She's going, okay, this is going to be a painful one, but next year I should be a hero. I should be able to come in at a 6, 7, 5% budget. I mean, how did West Vancouver come in with a 6% budget? That's usually the worst city for budget increases.
Have you seen how much construction has gone up the hill, though?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Tax base.
I remember a time, though, looking across the water to West Vancouver, and it was the British properties back then. And you would see just a smattering of homes, above the line of the view of West Van. It is now approaching Cypress Mountain. But
the previous mayor lost on this issue, right? So it's very anti-development. It's a split down the middle, the West Van.
But that's where the money.
Council was last time. The mayor was pro-development, kind of. She was trying to finagle her way, and she got the boot.
Yeah.
So it's a highly politicized community on development. It's like West Side Vancouver, right? Same thing. These areas that live in these single-family homes that it's over. Move on. You guys gotta. You gotta share your space, man. Come on.
Time to share your space. Even find a way to do it gently. Find a way, find some middle.
You are a living example.
Find a way to do it. I am.
I go by your house, your place you live. You would never be able to tell. There's 4 units in there or 2? How many in there?
6.
6 units.
On what was one.
Literally, and you would drive by, you would never know it. You'd never know it.
And no shared walls, man.
Or wherever you are in Point Grey, I don't know.
West side,
somewhere,
whatever. Somewhere over there. We're not telling people where I live, but somewhere.
You're at the corner of happy and happier.
Happy and in a house I could never afford today.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yes.
I want people to be able to afford more, and maybe if we had some more stock available in our city that isn't 40th floor in a tower, that's not conducive to a family that wants to multi kids and pets and what have you. but for some it doesn't.
Yeah, I know.
Right. So like we need a balance to that type of density, and I think there's a big piece of that has to be shaken into the single family dwelling protectors, the NIMBYs, right? So
Hey,
yeah, I'm not
we're on
one.
Zoom now. I have no idea where we are with time, but I want to talk about
We're
Melanie
at
Mark.
30 minutes. We got to stop. We're just hitting our mark.
Just want to hit about Melanie Mark's decision to step down.
Yes.
Like, wow. She just like went to town on yesterday saying, you know, she's
torture
NDP.
chamber.
Yeah. NDP represents Mount Pleasant, which is where my office is, saying basically, I can't take it anymore. The evilness, the anger, the negativity, the bureaucracy, basically the slowness of change. Surprise, surprise. She got her 6 years in, so she got 7 years, so she gets her pension. But you know, I feel for her on the one hand. I was in politics, you know, it's frustrating. You get abused for sure, not only by sometimes people, because quite often people don't come up and say how great you are. They like to come up and tell you how shit you are. So, but in behind the scenes and the stuff that goes on, it is ugly in politics. And if you are not ready to take that, it's tough. But I hope, what I worry about when she does that kind of stuff publicly, it discourages even more so people who are great that should run for office. So I just want to put it out there that please don't let what she said discourage you if you're interested in getting into politics, because we need good people in politics. Please.
I'm going to say on the other side of that coin, though, as a woman,
got an ambulance going by if you can hear it.
I can. It fits though, because as the first First Nations woman elected into the legislature, she had a major hill to climb, and you and I cannot imagine that hill.
No.
And it is disheartening, especially to see the emotion that she had as she stood in the garb with the eagle feather in her hand. And people might mock that. And while I watched it, it hit me in my heart to say, we got some change to make here. And so she did say she's going to use her big mouth in other ways. And I hope that she does. And anybody who takes up the gauntlet of politics, you have to say thank you for your service to. I say that 100%. To you all the time. And I agree with you in that we need more good people willing to do it, because I know for a fact, George-Affleck, when you first sat me down before this podcast started, you're like, are you running for mayor? I was like, absolutely not.
Well, and you know, and because you know, I would like to rant on, and I was in office, so maybe I have, you know, but at the end of the day, and I know Melanie Mark is a very personal decision to leave politics for sure, and people say family, and it's true, all that stuff. But you know, you can't make a lot of change on the outside. You make more, even if you're frustrated. If you want government to change, you got to run for office. So anybody out there who's thinking of running for office, and this is a teaser of something that I'm working on coming up in the next few weeks.
Another teaser?
Well, it's the same
we're
thing.
Out of time, George. Tell me next week. Tell me next week.
Maybe not the full story coming, but it's coming. It's coming.
George is on Twitter at George_Affleck. I am at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y, at Jody Vance on Twitter. Thank you for tuning in. We love hearing back from you. Comment, like, and subscribe, people. Like and subscribe. Share UnSpun podcast. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.